But I forgot to research what viscose is. Right back. So yes, I made myself another Ren Fair costume. What can I say? I like options. The best thing about this costume is that it is inclusive. If you have a medical or personal reason to not wear things that are snug and close-fitting and stiff, this allows you to dress historically and comfortably. You can dress it up, you can dress it down, you can give it additional shapes so that it curves with your body, you can let it loose, you can put in strategic elastic, you can leave it drapey. The options are endless, and it's easy to adapt it to your personal needs. One of the drawbacks to drawing historically is that it is not very inclusive. That the costumes, if you want to achieve the right silhouette at least, they don't account for those things. They don't account for medical reasons, personal reasons, whatever, that maybe you can't wear a corset, maybe you can't wear stays, maybe you can't wear a kirtle that kind of pushes you up and in and whatever. So having an option that is historically accurate is a great thing. And sure, yes, as you can see by the picture, I decided to leave mine loose and drapey, but that's just me. It doesn't have to turn out looking like that in the end if you don't want it to. I was first introduced to this particular style at the last Ren Fair. One of my guild members was wearing it, and I was just mind blown. She was so comfortable, and she looked great, and I was just instantly drool, I want that. Her daughter, who had made hers, invited me over to her house, and they had a copy of the pattern for me, and we had a great time cutting out all the pieces and everything. The footage on that was lost because I dropped my phone in a puddle, and so my phone was in a thing of rice trying to get the water out of the charging port. So I didn't get any footage of that little endeavor, but it was just so wonderful of them that they took the time to get this prepared and ready for me and to help me. So, shout out to them. When asked, she said that she had gotten the pattern from another guild member who had gotten it from the Tutored Tailor, which is a very common book. You can find it on Amazon. I'll put a link in the description so you can find it too. And it's a very simple dress. It is the easiest Ren Fair dress you could ever make. Me, of course, being who I am, I decided to use French seams, but we'll get there. The first thing I needed to do was make and do chemise. Mine had the puffy sleeves and was very loose and was a different style, so I needed one that was a little bit more close-fitting. But I went to elizabethancostumes.com. They have that smock generator. I'll put a link to that in the description as well, where you enter in your measurements and out pops a pattern. It was very easy to follow, and there are a lot of tutorials out there on how to make this particular smock. I'm not going to go into the whole thing all over again because it was pretty easy to make. The hardest part, of course, were the gussets. I ended up leaving those out because I made it too big anyway, and I didn't necessarily need them. For this costume, I decided that I wanted to make it out of linen. I do get overheated very easily, and linen breathes really well. It's supposed to be really good for people who get overheated very easily, even in November. And so decided linen was the way to go. I already had white linen in my stash because I had gotten it from a bed sheet. I don't know if you were aware, but Target used to carry 100% linen sheets that nobody was buying because they were like $180. I found an online auction site that was local to me, so I was able to just drive and pick it up, that had some of those Target 100% linen sheets, and I was able to get them at auction for $20. It was a steal. So I already had this linen in my stash. So I cut up the fitted sheet, and the fitted sheet was really all I needed for this smock. but cut off the corners and the elastic and used that fitted sheets with the pattern I had gotten from the Elizabethan costume smock generator to make my smock. It worked out great. It was soft, it was comfortable. Remember not to put it in the dryer because linen does not go in the dryer. The dress is in two parts. You have the inner dress, the kirtle, and you have the outer dress, which is the surcoat. For the kirtle, in the original pattern, it calls for eyelets along the back, and you would lace it up along the back, but we discovered that as long as you had something in there to have it a little bit looser, that you could just pull it on over your head. So instead of having that be a seam up the back with the eyelets, we just cut it on the fold, and we're done with it. And sure enough, you can pull this right over your head. The other thing that we decided that we were going to add was pockets. Of course, you need pockets, and nobody can tell that your historically inaccurate pockets are in this dress. So we did it. We put our pockets in there, even though it's not historically accurate. I found a beautiful linen blend fabric at Joann's. It's 15% linen, which is not much, but 85% viscose. I did have to do a little bit of research into this because I wasn't very familiar with that type of fabric, or fiber I should say. Viscose is a type of rayon. It was first developed in 1883 as an alternative for silk. Tells you a bit about it right there because it has that nice drape and luster. It makes for a really nice fabric. It is made from wood pulp, usually from beech, pine, eucalyptus, and nowadays sometimes bamboo. It's very absorbent and lightweight, it's breathable, it's soft, so that's a good one to blend with linen as it has a lot of those same properties as linen. I found it to be very similar to work with to linen. It was still kind of shifty and wanted to move around, but it was just as soft, it was easier to launder, and I had great results with it. Because I am a glutton for punishment, I decided that I was going to make this costume using French seams. I know. The downside to this fabric is it does fray. So you want to make sure that you finish all those seams. Me, being a glutton for punishment, decided I was going to do French seams. Why? I couldn't even tell you. For some reason, I just wanted to do French seams with pockets. What was I thinking? I don't know. Moving on! On the kirtle, there are only 4 pieces of fabric. The back piece, the 2 side pieces, and the front piece. That front piece, you can either make it out of the same fabric as the rest, or you can make it with a more expensive fabric, as that is the one that will show through the surcoat, in order to dress it up and make it more upper class. So like with all French seams, I put the wrong sides together, and as long as you remember wrong sides together, you will always do it right, and you won't have to go back and unpick your project in order to make sure it's wrong sides together. What sides do you put together when starting your French seam? Wrong sides. That's all you have to remember, and you'll get it right every time. Wrong sides. I sewed the wrong sides together to make that seam. I cut them down to as close as I could get. I ironed them open. I have found that I get a crisper line when I iron them open and then fold them on top of themselves, and then sewed it up again the other way to make that beautiful French seam. All the loose ends were encased. I won't have to worry about fraying in this costume. It'll last for a long time. And yes, I did do the French seams for the pockets as well. You attach the pocket to the sides of the dress first and do your French seams on that seam first before you go to doing the French seams on the actual side of the dress, including the pocket, just like you would sew up a regular pocket all at the same time. You do that with your French seams as well. Just that added step. I hem-stitched the neckline and arm size, not because there was any particular need to do that, but because I did want to get a little bit of practice in with my hand stitching. It's not my strongest suit, so it was good to get some practice in. Once I sewed some trim onto the bottom of the skirts, it was done, and I could move on to the surcoats. For the surcoats, I used a different color and weight of the linen blend, and decided that I was going to have my surcoat fabric as the gauze as a complementary color. For the surcoat, you have the two front pieces, the back, and the two gauze, and that's it. Those are all the pieces that you need. I once again did the French seams on the surcoats, especially since I didn't close the surcoat so it could open and you could see those seams. It made it look very nice and very finished and like it didn't need a lining, which it didn't. I first attached the gauze to the side piece using those French seams and then finished up those last seams. I turned over the rest of the raw hems that went all the way around, a 1/4 of an inch, then turned them over again and sewed them down. I sewed some trim on top of that, and that was really it. I did make a couple of slits in the side that lined up with the pockets in the kirtle so that I could get my hands in there, and I just hand stitched those open. The sleeves were probably the trickiest part, and I thought about how I wanted to go about it, because one thing I know is that you want to get the trim on before you finish the sleeves, otherwise it's hard to get that sewing in there. I decided to have a strength layer to the sleeves and used a lightweight duck cloth for that strength layer. I attached both sides of the sleeves together for both the outer fabric and the strength layer, and then attached them at the tops and bottoms, then turned them right side out and pressed them. I used my serger to serge both sides so that it would not fray. And from there I attached my trim. This one was the hardest trim to attach because it had that strength layer and all of those layers, so make sure that you're using a heavyweight needle and not the standard needle. Once the trim was sewn on, it was a matter of sewing up those two sides that had been serged and turning the sleeves right side out. It was very simple, and I had nice clean lines as a result of doing it this way. I did have a lot of thought go into what I wanted to do with the shoulder tabs. There's a lot of different options. I wasn't quite sure, but I knew I didn't want the larger tabs because on my narrow shoulders it would probably be too much. So I decided that I would fold the tabs over and make them into little tunnels, and then fold them again to make them have that curved look to them. They came out a little bit flat, but it still worked, and I think they still looked adorable. I stitched those onto the shoulders and sewed on some ribbon to the surcoat and then onto the sleeves so that I could tie those with ribbons and make the sleeves detachable. Because one thing I'm knowing, when summer comes and more fairs are during the heat, I'm going to want to take those sleeves off. Overall, this was a fairly easy project to make. Even with using French seams, it didn't take me very long, and I had wonderful results. So 10 out of 10 would recommend. Some of the things that you can do in order to make the look more flattering or make it a little bit more personalized is that you can take the side seams here and cut them more on a curve so that it follows the curve of your body more, if you want to have that nice hourglass shape to it. Another thing you can do is that you can sew elastic into the armpits and just decide how much you want to take in. That way you can still pull it over your head, but it'll cinch in just that little bit in strategic areas. And of course you can put that elastic anywhere you want. No one will see it, but it'll give you that little bit of cinch in order to make a more flattering shape. I decided I wasn't really going to do that. I was just fine with the loose, comfortable shape. We had a rather gloomy Saturday at the Renaissance Fair. The fog decided to stick around the entire day, so enjoy the English ambiance in this reveal. So overall, I would rank this as the most comfortable Renaissance costume you could possibly make. I would absolutely recommend it to anyone who wants to have a comfortable, inclusive costume. So with that, I'm going to clean my sewing space and get started on my next project. See you next time!